What up YouTube, Tony here. Today we are going to answer some of the frequently asked questions on the Floatwheel Atom. So the first one being the beta version of the Atom. Some people are finding it very hard to install the rails onto the motor, and the axle blocks is not perfectly lining up with the rail. I heard that Ran has some problems fitting the motor zone, and some other people as well. If you have this kind of problems, just hit me up on my email, and I will send you a new set of rails and axle blocks and stuff. Because the first batch, obviously, the manufacturers for the motor did not put this rounded corner on the axle. And let me show you the picture. And it's causing the axle not fully seated into the axle blocks. There is supposed to be this rounded corner. So if you are having a squared corner at motor axle, you just need to file this down to a corner. So in production versions of Atom, we will be taking care of this. We're gonna put a QC here. We're gonna check here before we send it out. That's what the beta is for, finding out problems. Okay. And the next thing is the plastic, which is some very good news, because so far nobody has been able to crack this plastic. That's due to the Atom is using a different kind of plastic called polycarbonate. So polycarbonate is known for its impact resistance. So the first iPhone 5C also using this kind of plastic. And last night, our beta tester Gene was testing the Atom on the trail, and he hit a very big rock with the Atom at a very high speed. And I can see that he sent me a picture that the footpad was only dented a little bit. No crack was found during this area here. So it's good to know the Atom is using some really good quality plastic parts. You are not gonna be replacing some of these plastic parts very soon because they are very durable. At least they are very impact resistant. We have not yet find out about how scratch resistant it is, but we will find out. So I'm very happy with the polycarbonate plastic we've been using for the Atom. So moving on to the next, which is the BMS. Some folks are worried about, will this BMS coming off during riding if the battery has some problem? And the answer is no, because Atom is using a charge-only BMS. So this charge-only BMS only has a output fuse. That's only gonna stop the power from coming out of the battery once your board is short or it's on fire, or Self-Dado once clamped his wires and caused a short, and that fuse saved his life. And so it's not gonna be easily tripped during riding, because it was on the data sheet. It was a 80 amp fuse, but it's gonna require 20 amps of current and consistent for 10 seconds for the fuse to blow. Or if you are shorting out the controller or the mid cables, you will be having 1000 amp of current, something near that, and it's gonna trip the fuse immediately, like within a few milliseconds. So that's there to save your life, and it's not gonna cut power in any circumstances other than you are having a short. So that's that. And so the charge-only BMS also has all the functions, all the protections you're gonna need from charging the battery. So it has over voltage protection. So it monitors every single cell. So if one cell is above 4.2 volts, it's gonna cut the charger power. So it's gonna have over voltage protection and over temperature protection and under temperature protection. So we will not be able to charge this board in -5C, I remember. And under -5C, you're not gonna be able to charge this, just to protect the batteries. And Other than that, there is a balance function built in as well. So it's gonna automatically balance all the cells to keep it from drifting away from each others. And charge only BMS. Okay, moving on to next. Just the good thing is just charge only BMS will never control power to the board. So that's good to know. I will trust my life with this board, with this BMS and this controller. It's really bulletproof. It's being try and true. And moving on to the next one, the tires. Okay, I think Jeff hating on this tire for entire 10 minutes. But I just want you to know that I actually love the Dunlop tires. I'm really sad because I've only been able to buy 37 of the tires. I thought I can just buy more Dunlop tires and I do not need to make my own tire. But it turns out that they only have like 37 in stock in China because it was made in Japan. And I really love that tire. I thought, let's send those really good Dunlop tires to all the famous people so they can, they're gonna love this tire. But it turns out everybody was hating on this tire. But for me, the Atom is something you would zip around in the New York City, in New York City on. So I've not designed the tire to be really flat. Flat tires, they are more useful if you are going very long distances. You are going grand tour, okay? But the Atom is a zip around town board. So the tires need to be very zippy. So you can see the production version of the tire. So now this tire is at 20 psi. You can see it's very, very rounded. And if you lower the psi a little bit more, it will be less rounded and it will be more stable. Okay, so it's basically a tunable profile. It's a tunable tire profile. I basically went into the tire factory and I told them, give me your softest compound for this tire. And they made me one and it took like 30 days and I tried, it was too flat and it was still very hard. I said, I need to be more softer than the samples. So he made me one, and now you can see you can basically put dents into this tire. It's gonna be really great. It's basically the best kind of slick tire I've tried in my history of tires. And so if you are ordering the non-beta version of Atom, so you are gonna receive this tire. And instead of the Dunlop tire. So next thing is that I've heard some folks complaining about it's very hard to pump air into the Atom because we have this really small 5-inch hub and we also have this air scoop in the way. So I will show you a tutorial on how to pump air into the Atom. Okay, today I'm gonna show you how to pump the air in the Atom. It's gonna be a little different than other builds because we have the air scoop and we have the little short valve here. So first of all, you have to remove the air scoop. I prefer to remove the top half of the scoop. Just 2 screws and you can use the tool T20 to remove it. Once you have the scoop off, I'm using the Xiaomi pump, so I removed this hose from the pump like this very easily, and you rotate the valve to the top of the wheel, and we screw this tube onto the valve. Okay, so it's going to come in at a little bit angle here because the rail is in the way. So what you can do is that you twist this tube a little bit, you push it a little bit so it clears and it aligns with this valve here. And you just screw this on, and with one hand holding the tube like this, the other hand screw it on like this. And you are going to hear a hissing sound. That means your tube is connected. Okay, and now we can just screw on the pump to the tube. Okay, once it's screwed on like this, you can activate the pump by using a little tool like this. There is a switch inside. So for a maximum range, you want to set the PSI to 28. So for me, I'm a 180-pound rider, and I was able to get 30 miles of range out of the Atom with 28 PSI of air. So if you go for the more balanced between range and comfort, you can set it to 20 PSI. This will maybe get you 20. I'm gonna try tonight. I'm gonna share this later. So if you go for maximum comfort, you can use 13 PSI. Okay, so I'm just gonna use 20 to see. So if everything is balanced, you have decent comfort, how long you can have the range to be. Okay, that's how you pump air into the Atom. You need to remove this air scoop, and it's confirmed that if you have a Xiaomi pump, you will be able to pump air into this tire. And moving on to the next one, which is people are asking how long is the early bird price gonna last? Well, it's only gonna last for about 2 more weeks because Tony trademarked 2 more weeks because we want this beta to last a bit longer so we can find out if there is any potential issues. So far, people have been really worried about the voltage issue, but it turns out to be no problem. Even with the 99-volt firmware they put on there, they still was not able to kill this controller. So that's out of the way. The over voltage concerns are out of the way. And moving on to the mag handle. Okay, people are asking, why do I have to pay $20 shipping fee for this mag handle? And we will be fixing that soon. So later when you order the mag handle, it's gonna ship with your board, and we're gonna set the weight of this handle to 0, so you're not gonna pay additional shippings to these handles. And for the fender as well, we will be able to ship the fenders in the next few weeks, and the tooling for it is done, and the testing has went very smoothly, and you will be able to purchase this top part of the fender, and you will be click it onto the Atom. And moving on to the next thing, which is compatibility with W rails. So we have been very stupid. We thought, if we put a notch on the axle block and we put a notch on the rails, and they all match together. So you put in the blocks, they automatically center itself. So we haven't thought about compatibility with pint rails or W rails. A lot of people are going to be putting on W rails on their pint. So we will be making changes to the axle block. We will make sure it's compatible with WTF rails from TFL. And for those beta version of Atom riders, if you want to upgrade your Atom to the WTF rails, you can send me an email, and I will ship you a revised version of the axle block that will allow you to put the Atom onto WTF rails. And moving on to the next. And people have been complaining about pumping air, and I suggest that if you are not using the Xiaomi pump, you are using some big gas pump, you better pump the tire to your preferred PSI before you install it onto the Atom. So you don't have to worry about pumping air into it later. It will be very easy to pump air if the motor is not installed into the board. And next is about tips about tuning the Atom. So the Atom has a 9T motor, which means the coil turns 9 times into the stator. The hypercore usually is a 6-turn motor. So if you are sending 100 amp of current into the hypercore, that will be equal to you sending 900 amps of current into the atom. So a very easy way to modify your current tune for the hypercore and turn it into a atom compatible tune is that you basically have the refloat CFG on, and you're gonna have your angle P, rate P, angle I, and the item limit. Those four numbers are going to be affecting the writing style the most. The others, they can be fine-tuned or micro-tuned to the atom spec. So I would suggest that you take the tune you write with hypercore and you put a 0.66 on the front of the number. So for example, the default angle P is 20, and for the atom you are going to need let me do a quick math here. You're gonna need 13.2 to put it here. And you're also gonna take the 0.6 of rate P and times it with 0.66. And that's gonna be close to 0.4. And if also do the same for your angle I. So basically the angle P, rate P, angle I are going to be timed 0.66 for it to translate into the tune the atom is going to be using. So these are the numbers that are gonna affect the writing, the basic of the writing mostly. And moving on, you have the pitch KP. Of course, you can tune this number to be a little bit higher or lower if you want to make the board loosen up or make it tighter. So Jeff was using Nico's tune on the atom during the range test, and it performed really bad. It has 20% more battery than the Pine X, but it did not have as long the range the Pine X has. I think it was due to the tire pressure, which they did not show in the video. The tire pressure might be lower than expected because it could be that they feel the download tire is too squirrely, so they lower the PSI a little bit, and that could be affecting the range as well. And also the tune is good. If the tune is overpowered, it's gonna send more current into the motor and cause unwanted heat. And basically above 100 amps of current you put into the baby core, that's all gonna turn into heat because it enters that state which is magnetic saturation, which means even if you put more current into it, it's not gonna turn into torque. It's only gonna turn into heat. So I suggest that if you want to make the most out of atom, you set the maximum current to 100 amps, and you try to make your tune to map perfectly that in the extreme conditions, the maximum current output, the maximum current demand from the refloat is going to be 100 amps. So it's not going to overshoot. If your reflow package demands more than 100 amp, you're gonna hit the current wall. So you're gonna feel that clunk when you rock it back and forth. So what you want to do is adjust your tune so that it maps the current. So this is the refloat current demand. So this is the gas pedal from 0 to 100 amp. So you want to map the refloat CFG package current demand to 0 to 100. You don't want it to be mapping 0 to 150. So it's demanding more current than this gas pedal is going to be provide. So it's not mapping correctly between the refloat CFG and the motor current limits. So that's the tuning. So the stock tune, basically I set it to in the most extreme conditions, it's gonna demand 100 amps of power. But I just looked at Nico's tune. You can just rock back and forth easily, and you can demand 100 amps, and it often overshoots 100 amps. And the part that overshoots over 100 amp is going to turn into heat into a motor, and that's gonna affect your range as well. Okay, moving on to the next, which is okay, so about the tune, we are still trying out a tune that everybody loves. Okay, but the things about tune is that it's very personal. So for the stock tune, I wanted to have really soft, really playful kind of feel to it. So, but for Jeff, it's underpowered. It's too soft. It has no break. And so the thing about tuning is it's very personal. So what we want is that we want to find out a tune in the community which is accepted by everybody. So which is why we want to extend the beta version, the beta time a little bit longer, so we will be able to find out, what's the best tune for everybody. So we will load the best tune, the one that's verified by Self-Dado, that has no problems, and we want to load that tune onto the production version of the Atom, so you get the best kind of out-of-box experience. And moving on to the last one, which is the tire compatibility. So it's confirmed to fit Hoosier 45/100-4.5. So if you're gonna buy a Hoosier, that's gonna fit on this perfectly. And the Enduro 555 is also confirmed to fit, but if you put a Enduro 555 onto the Atom, it's basically a bigger tire. So you are basically running Atom BTG. And once you use the 555 motor, you will not be able to use the fender delete, I believe. Or otherwise you have to modify the fender delete a lot to make it fit the 555. But if you decided to get the 555 onto the Atom, it also works. You're gonna trim it off here and there. You're gonna file down the gland a little bit. You're gonna file down, other part apparently, and but Tyler has confirmed that it will fit the Enduro 555. Okay, that's all for the FAQ part, and moving on to the range test part. So I decided to do a range test because I heard that it performed worse than the Pine X. I thought that something is wrong. Okay, so it has 20% more than the Pine X, and it's lighter. So I would assume the Atom to run a longer range than the Pine X. But in the test that TFL does, it seems that it only have about 12.5 miles of range. So I decided to do my own kind of range test. So I did the first range test. I just know, to just make fun out of it. Okay, let's see how much range we can get out of the Atom if we accept the rock hard tires. So I just pump it to 28 psi, and I was able to get 30.5 miles out of the Atom. Of course, I run it all the way down to 2.5 volts per cell. Usually, you should stop at 2.7, but just for fun, I did it, and it was 30.5, and it was very accurate because I did a OD measurement of a string, and I measured it with a ruler, and I put the numbers corrected into the app, into the Wax tool.
Possible. And now we just need the this one here, and we have our ruler here. Put it here. I can do this. So it looks like we got about
30.5 miles. You can try it. If you pump it to 30 psi and go and try it, I guarantee you're gonna get 30 something miles of range if you are a lighter rider than me. So I also did another test, which is closer to the everyday use case. So 20 psi. 20 psi is still, people would think 20 psi is still too high, is still too hard for the tire. But actually, One Wheel or FM, they ship their wheel with 20 psi of air inside of it. So it's gonna get you the balance point between comfort and range. So for the 20 psi, you're gonna see in the next boring 80 minutes of the riding video, which is running. The tire was running on 20 psi, and the rider is 185 pounds, 183 maybe. And I got 24.5 miles of range out of the Atom. Okay, so at first I was having the Strava on as well, because some people demanded to see the GPS readings, because you can put a really big tire diameter into the vest tool and fake a very long range. So I had the Strava on as well to record the GPS, but the first couple hundred meters from the hotel room to outside where they have the GPS signals, that was not recorded in the Strava. And also in the last few miles, because there was raining outside, I had to do the rest of the range test inside the hotel lobby. So it was 4 a.m. Nobody was in the lobby, and the security didn't give a shit about me flying around the lobby. So I just did the last 3.5 miles of riding. Basically, it's at 0 on the VESC tool when I arrived in the hotel, and I was still able to get about 4 miles of range out of the Atom. So also during the time that I had the Strava GPS record, you can see me switching between Strava and the VESC tool to check how accurate is my VESC tool range is. So at the VESC tool, when the VESC tool set 10 miles, which is 16.1 kilometers, I switched to the Strava, and it said 14.95, which means that the VESC tool gives about 7% more range reading than the Strava, which is GPS based. So, and you take into consideration that the first few maybe 300 to 400 meters was not recorded by the GPS because it was inside the hotel. There was no GPS signal. So let's add 300 meters to the equation. So the GPS, the math works out to be the VESC tool gives about 5% more range reading than the GPS. So we have to discount my 24.5 mile, and we make some offset to that. That equals 23.2 miles of range, according to the GPS. Because the last few miles was inside the hotel, there was no GPS, so we had to find a point of GPS reading and VESC tool reading, and we calculate the difference, and we take the difference into consideration of the VESC tool reading, and totally I can confirm that, and I can guarantee with my life, with 20 psi of tire running on smooth pavement or tarmac, you will be able to get 23.275 miles out of the Atom. And there is a value that you can see on the VESC tool, which is consumption, and it ends in watt hours per mile. So if you have this number to be, so which means then this value means how many watt hours you're gonna consume for every mile. So the battery of the Atom, you can consider it to be 380 watt hours. Actually, it was 394, but you have to take into consideration that we have lights running here, and we have MCU running here, we have the LCM, we have the Bluetooth running as well. Those are not taking into consideration of the consumption, okay? So just think about it. you have about 380 watt hours to spend, and you have your efficiency, which is watt hours per mile. So during the first of 28 psi riding range test, I was able to get 11.8 watt hours per mile. So that's extremely low because I was riding with a rock solid tire. And the second ride I did was a 20 psi ride, and I have got about around 16 watt hours per mile of efficiency. So you can see that 20 psi and 28 psi, that makes a very huge difference in the range. So imagine if you drop the tire psi to maybe 10, 12, 13, that's gonna affect your range even more. So expect to get it maybe 10 and something, 10 and 15, something like that. So if you lower your tire pressure, that you're gonna sacrifice some range, but you're also gonna get healthier knees. I guess. That's all for today, and I will let you enjoy the very boring, very noisy range test. And enjoy. I started 20 psi of range test. Let's go. Okay, let's first get out of the hotel. I'm just gonna put the real-time data here, and gonna have my Strava on as well, so you guys can have the GPS readings. Okay, let's put the Crocs into sport mode. Let's go.
phone just dies. I need to go back to the room and grab my charger, and we will be pushing to maybe 60 volts. I think there are still 0.6 miles of range left in the board. For my observation, I find that 0.5 volts equals to about 0.1 miles of range at the very end. Oh, 手机没电，来拿充电器。 done 24.5 miles. So it looks like 20 psi, which is acceptable for riding for very long distances. And it can do 24.5 miles in my test. And my tuning is, let me show you my tuning. Let me hop over to Refloat CFG. This is my tune. 14, 0.4, 0.003, and 2.0 kp, and 1.4 row kp, and the rest I will show you on the screen. Let me show you the ATR at this kind of value. Take a screenshot for yourself and you will be able to see what tune I'm running. And I'm gonna show you the motor configurations. Basically, we are going to see the current settings. The current is set at 100 amps. And the battery amps is 70 minus 40. Yep, that wraps up the range test, I guess. And right now we are at, let me see the voltage. The voltage is going to, let me slow down a bit. Okay. The voltage is 57.7.8, 0.9, 0.8, 58, 58.1. Because the voltage sensor has a RC filter in it, so it's gonna take a while to settle down the values. So in the end, looks like we have got 58.4 volts left. 0.5 actually. Let's see if it hops up again. Okay, I will take it at 58.6. Okay, let's end the range test here tonight. I'm still very amazed by the values actually, because you know it's a relatively very small battery, but it looks like it can do some pretty long distances. Okay, see you in the next one.